Coming up next, my 3 favorite best perfumes for cold weather. It's that time of year. I just came back from New York and I tested this, and all 3 of these were amazing. Find out what they are coming up next. Welcome back, everybody, to Joel the Nose. And I am back from New York City and Scent Explorer. I already did my video on it. What an amazing experience. I did bring back, unfortunately, a nasty cold or flu. So I've been kind of out of it for about 4 or 5 days now. Still congested. You can hear it in my voice. My voice is still a little bit hoarse. I may cough a little bit. Excuse me, clear my throat. But I'm almost, I think, through the worst of it. But I wanted to do this video because it was, hot in my mind about cold weather fragrances that work well in the cold weather. I did a video a few weeks ago, talked about how cold weather is more difficult to wear fragrances because you need heat to activate the molecules and the chemicals in the fragrances on your skin in order for those, in order for the smell to be detected by our noses. So without that heat, it's more difficult, and the sense, you can't smell them as much, you can't smell them from as far, you have to get closer, they don't last as long as they would in warm weather like we have here in Miami. So in New York, it was roughly 30 degrees, and what is that? For all my friends who live in other places, let's just say 30, I'm gonna do a quick calculation, 30 degrees, Fahrenheit to Celsius, okay, is about 3.89 degrees Celsius. So for me, that was cold. It was a little between there, 30 and 40 degrees most of the time. And so this was a good test on what will work for that type of weather. I brought a number of fragrances, but 3 of them really stood out for me. And so let's get right into this. I'll go with my number 3. I'll go 3, 2, 1. Number 3, and these were all very close. And again, they all work very well, just so you know. From Histoire de Parfum, this is Outrecuidant. Outrecuidant, you see it there. It happens to be, of course, I've talked about this before, one of my personal favorite fragrances in my collection. But this is, it's got this just unique smell to it that it's both kind of a tad bit sweet in a like animalic way, almost like a sweet sweat, how sometimes sweat can smell a little bit sweet. It's like that, but I wouldn't say it smells like sweat. I'm just making a comparison because it's got some cardamom and ginger at the top. I think gives it that kind of little bit of a stinging sweetness, and it's got saffron and orange blossom and leather, which of course leather is a wonderful fragrance for the cold weather, cedar, patchouli, but this really is a dark, delicious fragrance. And when I wore it, it got me from one destination to the next in the cold, windy weather. I wore it on my skin. I also would spray a little bit on my clothes because I found that works very well in the cold weather. Just spraying on the skin is not good enough. That's what I found for me. Just another little tip. If you don't normally spray on your clothes in the cold weather, I would do it. I don't normally spray on my clothes. I don't have to do that here in Miami. It's not a necessity. You spray it on your skin, and most fragrances are going to last more than an acceptable or more than enough time than you would need. But in the cold weather, that's just not typically going to happen. So that's what I would do. I would spray a little bit on my sweater or whatever the last piece of clothing, layer of clothing I would have before I would put on my winter coat. All right, coming in then at, let's see, number 2. Interesting, you'll see these are all bottles that are kind of dark. They have this, dark, kind of more intense feel about them. And keeping in that theme, this is Extrait Noir. Extrait Noir from Elixir. Again, this one has got a camphor note that some people would mistake almost for a smoky oud, but it's not oud. It is camphor that I smell in this fragrance that gives it that smoky, rich, resinous, also has ginger in it. So both of these fragrances, Outrecuidant and Noir, Extrait Noir, both of them, my mind is still a little bit foggy from the sickness. Both of them have this really kind of sweet, almost smoky sexiness to them that is a unique combination that works really well in the cold weather. And take a look at that bottle, of course. But what I really love about this one is that it has also a dry down that goes into this kind of cinnamon, vanilla, castoreum. So you've got that animalic quality, which again, very sexy, mixed with that cinnamon, benzoin, vanilla, long lasting. With this, I get about 10 hours of wear. Now in the cold weather, I typically found I have to knock a little bit of time off of that. So if I get 10 hours in Miami and New York during the winter, I'm probably gonna get about 7 or 8 hours. That's just, again, on my skin. You gotta try it and see how it works for you. But just understand, people, wherever you live, really does affect when the weather is cold or hot, how it's gonna perform. That's why I'm recommending all these, because they all still performed well. I all still smelled them after all three of these fragrances after 7 or 8 hours. They still were on my skin and I could still smell them. That's not true for a number of other fragrances that I brought with me. So these three stood out. And that's gonna leave me to my number one fragrance. And wow, it's always been a beast. And sometimes you have these wonderful fragrances that sit with you, you love them, but you have so many, like a lot of us do, that you don't get around to all your fragrances as much as you want to. And this is one that I will definitely be getting more back into again, and that is Elle from Arcistes. Elle puts out so many great fragrances, from Poe, one of the more recent ones, obviously Elle, there's Ella for the female version of this. It's like an animalic version for females. But this one, boy, it is, I've talked about this before. I call this a dirty barbershop fougere. I mean, just the whiff right from the bottle, right from the cap, you can smell the animal running around in this bottle. This is, also has castoreum. I gotta say though, I think this has probably a touch more castoreum than the Extrait Noir. This one, he is pushing the limits. Some people are gonna find it, and I've talked about this with people before about Elle. Some people, when they smell it, like, it's a little bit too animalic for me. Other people are like, wow, that is sexy. However you want to slice it, it is a great fragrance. It is a unique fragrance, and it is a wonderfully performing fragrance in the cold weather. Again, animalic barbershop fougere, also has cinnamon in it. So that cinnamon was kind of prevalent in a number of these fragrances here. So it keeps a little bit of a sweetness in there, a little bit of a spiciness to it. You got clary sage, oak moss, orange blossoms, got some honey, patchouli, geranium. Wonderful mix of classic fragrance notes. They don't go crazy here, but what they put in here is such high quality, blended so well, and Arcistes is such a wonderful house. But this was my best performing fragrance in the cold weather in New York City, 30-degree weather. Again, for my Celsius using friends, 3.89 Celsius. Try it out, guys. Let me know your best cold weather performing fragrances. I want to know, because next time I go to other cities, I want to try some other things and see what also works well when I go to more cold cities. I'll be back soon with another video. I'll leave you with my new slogan, wear wisely.